The human delegation shifted nervously in the grand hall of the Unity Station, the massive space habitat that had been constructed specifically for this historic meeting. Captain Marcus Kennedy stood a bit straighter than the others, his 6 years of diplomatic training evident in his composed demeanor despite the momentous occasion. Humanity's first official peace negotiation with an alien civilization was about to begin, and as lead security officer, he needed to project confidence. "They're coming," whispered Admiral Olivia Blackwell, the delegation's leader. "Remember the briefing. The Viridi are peaceful but extremely formal. Follow protocols precisely." The massive doors at the far end of the chamber slid open, revealing the alien delegation. Marcus had studied the reports, seen the grainy footage, but nothing prepared him for seeing the Viridi in person. They were roughly humanoid in shape, 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, but there the similarities ended. Their skin ranged from pale mint to deep emerald, and instead of hair, many had what appeared to be delicate, plant-like filaments. Leading them was a figure that made Marcus momentarily forget his training. She, at least Marcus assumed it was a she, based on the briefings on Viridi physiology, had skin the color of fresh spring leaves and a crown of vibrant red, curly tendrils that resembled human hair but seemed to move slightly even in the still air of the chamber. Her eyes were large, almond-shaped, and a striking violet that seemed to shimmer in the light. "Ambassador Alara Thalasi of the Viridi Confederation," announced the station's AI in both English and the melodic language of the visitors. "Chief negotiator for the proposed Terran-Viridi Accord." Marcus found himself directly in her path as she approached the human delegation. Protocol dictated that he should bow slightly and step aside, but when their eyes met, he found himself frozen. There was something in those alien eyes, intelligence, curiosity, and something else he couldn't identify. "You are not the leader," Alara said in flawless English, her voice carrying a musical quality that human vocal cords could never replicate. "Yet you stand in my path as though you have something to say." Admiral Blackwell started to intervene, but Marcus recovered quickly. "Security, Captain Marcus Kennedy, Ambassador. I apologize for the breach in protocol. I was momentarily distracted by the honor of being among the first humans to formally meet your people." A small smile played at the corners of Alara's mouth, revealing teeth that were pearlescent and slightly pointed. "Honesty? Refreshing. Most diplomats would have manufactured a more elegant excuse." Over the next several hours, as the delegations exchanged formal greetings and established the groundwork for negotiations, Marcus found his attention repeatedly drawn to the Viridi ambassador. There was something about her movements, fluid yet precise, that fascinated him. When she spoke, outlining the Viridi's concerns about human expansion and their conditions for peaceful coexistence, he found himself agreeing with her points despite his loyalty to Earth's interests. During a brief recess, Marcus found himself alone with Ambassador Alara in one of the station's observation lounges. She stood before the massive viewport, gazing at the stars, her red tendrils swaying gently as though moved by an unseen breeze. "Your species is puzzling, Captain Kennedy," she said without turning. "So young compared to mine, yet you've spread across your solar system with remarkable speed." Marcus moved to stand beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "We're explorers at heart, adaptable, sometimes recklessly so." "And what do you personally seek, Captain?" Her violet eyes turned to him, seeming to look beyond his uniform to something deeper. "Understanding," he answered truthfully, "of the universe, of other beings, of ourselves." Alara's expression softened. "Perhaps we are not so different." She extended her hand in what Marcus recognized as an attempt at a human gesture of greeting. "Among my people, we believe that understanding begins with connection." When Marcus took her hand, a subtle tingling sensation traveled up his arm. He'd been briefed about the mild electromagnetic field Viridi naturally produced, but experiencing it was something else entirely. In that moment of contact, something shifted between them, a recognition, a possibility, a dangerous and wonderful realization. They both knew they should pull away, maintain professionalism, honor the weight of their respective duties. But for just a moment longer, their hands remained joined as the stars wheeled slowly past the viewport, silent witnesses to the beginning of something that would change 2 worlds forever. The negotiations between humans and Viridi had entered their 3rd week, and with each passing day, Marcus found himself creating increasingly flimsy excuses to be near Ambassador Alara. What had begun as simple curiosity had blossomed into something neither of them had anticipated. Captain Kennedy, I require an escort to the station's arboretum, Alara announced during a midday recess. I've been told your Earth plants have been cultivated there, and I wish to compare them to our viridiflora. Admiral Blackwell nodded absently, too absorbed in preparation for the afternoon session to notice the gleam in Alara's violet eyes or the slight flush on Marcus's face. Of course, Ambassador. Security protocol, Marcus replied with practiced professionalism that masked his quickening heartbeat. The Arboretum was a marvel of human engineering, a sprawling garden at the heart of Unity Station that housed specimens from across Earth. As they walked among exotic orchids and towering palms, the formal distance between them gradually dissolved. These are beautiful, Alara said, her slender green fingers hovering over a crimson rose, but they lack consciousness. On Viridi, many of our plants share a low-level awareness with us. Marcus watched, fascinated, as her red tendrils seemed to reach slightly toward the flower. Is that why your hair, forgive me, your tendrils move on their own? She laughed, a sound like wind chimes. They're called chromatophores, and yes, they're semi-autonomous. They respond to my emotions, to environmental changes, to energy fields. As if to demonstrate, they curled slightly toward Marcus when he stepped closer. They're beautiful, he said softly, then immediately felt foolish. Instead of taking offense, Alara's chromatophores rippled with what he was beginning to recognize as pleasure. Among my people, to compliment one's chromatophores is considered quite intimate. I apologize if I've overstepped, Marcus began, but she moved closer, the space between them charged with unspoken feelings. Don't apologize for honesty, Captain. It's your most attractive quality. Her voice had dropped to a whisper. That first kiss, hidden among the exotic foliage of the Arboretum, was like nothing Marcus had ever experienced. The slight electromagnetic tingle of her skin against his scent, waves of sensation through his body. Her chromatophores wrapped gently around his wrists, creating connections that seemed to bypass physical touch and speak directly to his nervous system. In the days that followed, they found every possible excuse to be alone. Alara needed to understand human recreational facilities. Marcus required briefing on viridicultural sensitivities. Each meeting led them further from their official duties and deeper into uncharted territory. This is madness, Marcus whispered one night as they lay together in his quarters, her green skin luminescent in the dim light, her chromatophores lazily tracing patterns on his chest. If anyone discovered us, on my world, to bond with an alien species would be considered a form of treason, Alara admitted, her violet eyes troubled. Our conservative factions believe that genetic purity is sacred. They barely tolerated the alliance negotiations. Marcus ran his fingers through her crimson chromatophores, causing her to shiver with pleasure. Earth isn't much better. There are groups that consider any alien contact a threat to humanity's development. They've already staged protests about these negotiations. Yet here we are, she said, pressing her forehead to his in a gesture he'd learned was deeply significant to her people. Their physical connection had evolved into something transcendent. Alara had shown him how viridi intimacy involved not just bodies, but energy, the electromagnetic fields of their nervous systems intertwining in ways that human partners could never experience. For her part, she found the intensity of human passion fascinating and freeing after the ritualized coupling of her species. During one afternoon session, when trade agreements were being discussed, their eyes met across the conference table. A diplomat from Earth was arguing for restrictive quotas on viridi imports, fear thinly disguised as economic prudence. Ambassador Thalassi, the diplomat said condescendingly, surely you understand that we must protect our markets from being overwhelmed by your advanced biotechnology. Before Alara could respond, Marcus found himself speaking. The ambassador's people have offered extensive knowledge sharing along with their products. This isn't about protection. It's about fear of the unknown. The room fell silent. Marcus had broken protocol by speaking out of turn, and worse, he'd contradicted Earth's official position. Admiral Blackwell stared at him with cold fury. Later, she cornered him in a corridor. What the hell was that, Kennedy? You're here for security, not policy, and the way you looked at the Viridi ambassador. She narrowed her eyes. There's something going on, isn't there? Admiral, I simply believe the restrictive approach is counterproductive too. Save it, she snapped. You're being reassigned, effective immediately. Pack your things, you're heading back to Earth on tomorrow's transport. That night, as he frantically packed his belongings, his door chimed. Alara stood there, her normally vibrant skin dulled with distress, her chromatophores nearly still. "They're sending me back to Viridi," she said without preamble. "My superiors say I've become compromised. They're replacing me with someone who will take a harder line against human interests." Marcus pulled her inside, taking her hands in his. "This can't be the end. What we've found, it's too important." Alara's violet eyes shimmered with determination. "On my world, there is a bonding ritual that transcends political boundaries. Once performed, not even the elders can separate a bonded pair." "Are you suggesting?" Marcus couldn't finish the sentence, the implications too staggering. Her chromatophores reached out, wrapping around his wrists with gentle pressure. "I'm suggesting we stop hiding. I'm suggesting we show both our worlds what's possible when we truly unite." As the station's lights dimmed for the night cycle, they made their decision. They would not be quietly separated. They would make a stand that neither Earth nor Viridi could ignore. They would get married. The Unity Station's central communication hub hummed with activity as Marcus and Alara prepared to make their announcement. They had chosen to broadcast simultaneously to both Earth and Viridi, leaving no opportunity for either government to suppress their message. Marcus adjusted his formal uniform, while Alara's chromatophores arranged themselves in an intricate pattern that signified important declarations in Viridi culture. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus asked, his voice low. "Once we do this, there's no going back." Alara's green fingers intertwined with his. "My people have a saying, fear of the current carries you away from the shore you seek. I won't let fear dictate our future." With a deep breath, Marcus activated the transmission. Within seconds, their faces appeared on screens across two worlds. "People of Earth and Viridi," Marcus began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I am Captain Marcus Kennedy of Earth's Diplomatic Security Force. Beside me stands Ambassador Alara Thalasi of the Viridi Confederation. We come before you today not as representatives of our respective worlds, but as two individuals who have discovered something remarkable." Alara stepped forward, her violet eyes resolute. "During these negotiations, Captain Kennedy and I have formed a bond that transcends our biological differences. We have discovered that our species are compatible not just diplomatically, but personally." "We are in love," Marcus stated simply, "and we intend to formalize our union through marriage, combining the traditions of both our cultures." Alara's chromatophores rippled with emotion. "We believe our union represents the true potential of the alliance between our peoples, not just cooperation, but genuine connection." As their message concluded, the communication hub's monitors flooded with incoming transmissions. The reaction was immediate and polarizing. On Earth, news outlets blazed with headlines ranging from historic interspecies union heralds new era to human betrays species for alien lover. On Viridi, the traditionalist elders called for Alara's immediate recall and genetic purification, while progressive factions celebrated the union as evolutionary progress. Admiral Blackwell burst into the hub, her face flushed with anger. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The trade agreements were nearly finalized. Now half the human delegation is demanding we cut off all contact with the alien infiltrators before more humans are corrupted." "The agreement was built on fear and distrust," Marcus countered. "How can we claim to form an alliance when we won't even accept the possibility of true integration?" On the other side of the station, Alara faced similar outrage from her replacement, Elder Vox, whose deep forest green skin darkened further with displeasure. "You have violated our most sacred traditions," he hissed, his own chromatophores rigid with anger. "The Council of 13 has revoked your diplomatic status. You are no longer Ambassador Thalasi, you are simply Alara, disgraced and disconnected." Alara stood tall. "I remain connected to what matters most, Elder Vox. I have discovered truths about humans that you refuse to see." "Your discoveries are biological aberrations," Vox sneered. "What do you think will come of this union, offspring, impossible, acceptance, never?" Despite the official condemnation, messages of support began flooding in from younger members of both species. Human Viridi friendship associations sprang up overnight. A group of human scientists published a statement confirming that, while biological reproduction between the species was indeed impossible, there was no scientific basis for prohibiting social bonding. On Unity Station, security measures tightened as both delegations feared the publicity would make the station a target for extremists. Marcus and Alara found themselves under constant surveillance, officially for their protection, but the underlying message was clear. They were now considered security risks. One evening, as they shared a quiet dinner in Marcus's quarters, his communication device buzzed with an encrypted message. It was from Dr. Talia Wright, a xenobiologist who had worked on the initial contact team. "Captain Kennedy, Ambassador Thalassi," the message began, "I'm contacting you against direct orders. I believe in what you're doing and I want to help. There's a research outpost on Europa where my team has been studying compatibility between Earth and alien microbiomes. We have facilities, security, and most importantly, like-minded scientists. If you can get there, we can offer sanctuary and a place to hold your ceremony." Ilara's chromatophores fluttered with hope. "Europa, Jupiter's moon, we could do it, Marcus." "It would mean leaving everything behind," he said, though his eyes already showed he'd made his decision. "Our careers, possibly our citizenship." "We've already lost those," she replied softly, "but we haven't lost each other." Their escape would require precision timing and help from sympathizers. Using Dr. Wright's connections, they mapped a route that would take them from Unity Station to a research vessel, then to a commercial transport bound for the Jupiter colonies. The night before their planned departure, they were awakened by an urgent alert. A group calling themselves Earth Pure had released a statement condemning the abomination of cross-species contamination and promising to cleanse the stain before it spreads. Intelligence suggested they had smuggled explosives onto Unity Station. As Marcus and Alara hurriedly dressed, ready to help with evacuation procedures, the station shuddered violently. Emergency sirens wailed as the lights flickered and died, replaced by the dull red glow of backup systems. "That wasn't just a bomb," Marcus said grimly, checking the emergency channels on his communicator. "They've damaged the station's primary power core." Alara's skin paled to a lighter shade of green, a Viridi response to danger. "Marcus, my people are particularly vulnerable to radiation if the containment fields fail." The station's AI cut through their fear with a calm, automated message. "Attention all personnel. Radiation containment at risk in sections 12 through 17. Evacuation protocols initiated. Please proceed to your designated escape pods." In the chaos that followed, amid the rush of frightened diplomats and station crew, Marcus and Alara realized their original escape plan was now impossible. But as alarms blared and people fled, they also recognized an opportunity amid the disaster. "Everyone will be accounted for during the evacuation," Marcus said, pulling Alara toward an emergency access corridor. "We can use this confusion to disappear." As they raced through the dimly lit passageways of the damaged station, hand in hand, they were no longer Earth diplomat and Viridi ambassador. They were simply two beings fighting for their right to love across the stars, determined that their wedding would happen despite everything a universe of differences had thrown in their path. The Europa Research Station gleamed like a silver beacon against the ice moon's stark landscape. After a harrowing escape from Unity Station and 3 tense weeks of travel through the solar system, hiding on cargo vessels, bribing transport pilots, and narrowly avoiding capture twice, Marcus and Alara had finally reached sanctuary. Dr. Talia Wright greeted them at the airlock, her weathered face breaking into a smile. "Welcome to the edge of human civilization. Not exactly the romantic venue most couples dream of, but perhaps the safest place for you right now." The station was a marvel of human engineering, burrowed partially beneath Europa's icy surface. The upper levels housed research labs and living quarters, while deeper chambers extended into the moon itself, using the thick ice as radiation shielding. "The news of the attack on Unity Station has galvanized opinions on both sides," Talia explained as she led them through the sterile corridors. "Some blame you for provoking extremists, but many more have rallied to your cause. You've become symbols, whether you wanted to be or not." Their small quarters were Spartan but private. For the first time since their dramatic broadcast, they could breathe without looking over their shoulders. That night, as they lay together in the narrow bed, Alara's chromatophores gently illuminating the darkness with a soft, pulsing glow, they began planning their wedding in earnest. "On Viridi, bonding ceremonies last 3 days," Alara murmured, her fingers tracing patterns on Marcus's chest. The first day is for separation. The couple spends time with their respective families, severing old bonds to prepare for new ones. Marcus kissed her forehead. That might be difficult, considering our families are light years away and probably not speaking to us. The second day is for preparation, physical and spiritual cleansing, meditation on the commitment being made. And the third, her violet eyes met his. The third is for union. The couple's energy fields are gradually harmonized through a series of rituals, culminating in a physical joining that completes the bond. Despite their circumstances, they decided to honor as many traditions from both cultures as possible. Marcus contacted a few trusted friends from Earth who had supported their relationship. To his surprise, his younger sister Arya responded that she had already booked passage to Europa, defying their parents' wishes. "The way I see it," her message said, "someone from the Kennedy family needs to be there to welcome the first alien into our bloodline. Might as well be the black sheep of the family." Alara received an even more unexpected message from her former assistant, Trillian, whose pale green skin and youthful idealism had always set her apart from the more conservative Viridi delegation. "Ambassador, Alara, I no longer have an official position after supporting you publicly, but I've secured transport to your location. I bring with me the sacred tendrils you'll need for a proper bonding. The progressive movement on Viridi stands with you both." As preparations for the ceremony continued, Dr. Wright's team helped design a hybrid ceremony space in the station's central atrium. A biodome where earth plants grew alongside experimental Viridi flora, creating a lush garden beneath Europa's ice. The day before the ceremony, a communications officer brought troubling news. "We've detected increased activity in Earth and Viridi vessels throughout the Jupiter system. It appears both governments are searching for you, and they're getting closer." "How much time do we have?" Marcus asked. "If we're lucky, 3 days before they locate us. There's a lot of moon to search, but eventually." Marcus and Alara exchanged glances. "Then we proceed tomorrow," Alara said firmly. "We've waited long enough." That night, in keeping with both Viridi and human traditions, they spent their last hours as unmarried individuals apart. Marcus sat with his sister Arya, who had arrived that afternoon, her eyes wide with wonder at the alien environment of both the station and its Viridi visitors. "Are you sure about this, Marcus?" she asked. "Not just the wedding, everything that comes after. You can never go back to your old life." "I've never been more certain of anything," he replied. "When I'm with her, Arya, it's like finding a piece of myself I never knew was missing." In another part of the station, Alara and Trillian performed the traditional Viridi pre-bonding ritual. Trillian carefully braided precious mineral compounds into Alara's crimson chromatophores, enhancing their electromagnetic properties for the ceremony. "The elders say what you're doing will weaken our species," Trillian said softly. "But many of the younger generations see it differently. You're showing us possibilities we never imagined." The wedding day dawned. Though on Europa, under hundreds of kilometers of ice, dawn was merely a concept rather than a reality. The biodome had been transformed into a sacred space where 30 guests gathered. Dr. Wright's research team, a few human allies who had risked their careers to attend, and a small contingent of progressive Viridi who had traveled secretly from their homeworld. Marcus stood at the center of a circle marked with symbols from both cultures, wearing a formal Earth military dress uniform modified with elements of Viridi design, subtle green accents that complemented his human coloration. When Alara entered, a collective gasp rose from the assembly. She was radiant in a flowing garment of translucent, bioluminescent material that shimmered with each movement. Her green skin glowed with health and excitement, and her chromatophores had been arranged in an intricate crown atop her head, studded with tiny crystals that caught and refracted the light, sending prismatic patterns dancing across the dome. Dr. Wright, who had agreed to officiate, began the ceremony by acknowledging the unprecedented nature of their union. "We gather today to witness something never before seen in human or Viridi history, a bonding that transcends biological boundaries and speaks to the true meaning of connection." The ceremony blended elements from both cultures, the exchange of vows and rings from Earth tradition, and the Viridi ritual of energy harmonization, where Alara's chromatophores gently wrapped around Marcus's hands, creating a visible circuit of shared bioelectricity that made the air around them crackle with static. With this ring, I bind my life to yours, Marcus said, his voice steady as he slipped a band of rare Europa ice metal onto Alara's slender green finger. With this energy, I join my essence to yours, she responded, her chromatophores pulsing with intense light as they completed the circuit between them. As Dr. Wright pronounced them united under the laws of both worlds, the assembled guests erupted in celebration, human applause mixing with the harmonic humming that marked Viridi expressions of joy. The celebration had barely begun when the station's alarms suddenly blared to life. The communications officer burst into the biodome, his face pale. Multiple ships entering Europa orbit, Earth Military Command and the Viridi Enforcement Fleet. How did they find us so quickly? Marcus demanded. They must have followed your sister or Trillian, the officer said grimly. They're demanding your immediate surrender. Both governments claim jurisdiction over you. As the newlyweds looked at each other in desperation, the officer's console beeped with an urgent message. His expression shifted from fear to confusion. There's something else. Long-range sensors have detected a massive object entering the solar system. Unknown origin, not Earth or Viridi design. He looked up, his voice dropping to a whisper. Both fleets are requesting emergency communication with the station. They're saying all other concerns are suspended due to a potential first contact situation with a new alien species. Marcus and Alara stood frozen, their hands still joined, their personal moment of union suddenly overshadowed by an event that would change the course of both their civilizations forever. In the midst of their wedding, the universe had delivered one final, unexpected twist, a reminder that they were part of something far greater than themselves. The command center of Europa Research Station had never been designed to host an emergency summit between two species, let alone coordinate a response to a potential third. Yet here they were, Marcus and Alara, still in their wedding attire, surrounded by hastily assembled view screens showing the grim faces of Earth and Viridi military commanders. The object is approximately 3 kilometers in length, reported Dr. Wright, displaying the long-range scanner data. Its trajectory indicates deliberate navigation, not a natural orbit. It's slowing as it approaches Jupiter's orbital path. Admiral Helena Santos of Earth's Jupiter Defense Fleet leaned toward her camera. We've attempted standard greeting protocols on all frequencies. No response. As have we, added Commander Nexus of the Viridi Enforcement Fleet, his deep green skin almost black with tension. The vessel, if that's what it is, appears to be scanning our ships and your moon. Marcus studied the grainy images, the diplomat in him automatically analyzing the situation. Both your fleets are in defensive formations. To an unknown observer, that might appear threatening. Alara stepped forward, her wedding gown shimmering under the harsh lights of the command center. Commander Nexus, the Viridi have encountered more species than humans have. Does this vessel match any known design? Nexus's chromatophores flattened against his skull, a sign of negative response. Nothing in our archives, this is unprecedented. A tense silence filled the command center, broken only by the steady beep of monitoring equipment. Then Alara's violet eyes widened. The ancestral records, she whispered. There are legends from before our written history, tales of visitors who came in ships that absorbed light rather than reflected it. She pointed to the scanner image. Like this one. Admiral Santos scoffed. We're basing our response on alien mythology now. Every mythology contains seeds of truth, Marcus countered. And right now, it's the only lead we have. Before the argument could escalate, the station's communications officer called out. We're receiving a transmission. It's directed specifically at this station. The main view screen flickered, showing only a pulsing pattern of light and darkness. No recognizable language, no discernible message. Just a rhythmic sequence that repeated every 12 seconds. It's a binary code, Marcus realized, but not one I recognize. Alara's chromatophores began to twitch, mimicking the pattern unconsciously. It feels familiar somehow. She closed her eyes, letting her tendrils move freely. The pattern resonates with our nervous system's natural frequency. Dr. Wright glanced between the screens and her instruments. Both Earth and Viridi ships are being scanned intensively. Whatever this entity is, it's gathering information about us. We should prepare for defensive measures, Admiral Santos declared. That would be premature, Commander Nexus warned. Any aggressive action could. Wait, Alara interrupted, her eyes still closed. The pattern is changing. The pulsing on the screen shifted, becoming more complex. Simultaneously, Alara's chromatophores began moving in perfect synchronization with the display. They're trying to communicate through bioelectric patterns, she said, her voice distant. Similar to how Viridi communicated before we developed verbal language. Marcus watched in awe as his new wife essentially became a living translator. Can you understand what they're saying? Not words exactly, concepts, impressions. Her brow furrowed in concentration. They're curious. They've been observing our solar system for some time. They detected the unusual energy signature of our wedding ceremony, the harmonization of human and Viridi bioelectric fields. Admiral Santos leaned forward. They came because of your wedding. Not exactly, Alara replied, her chromatophores now flowing in complex patterns. They've been watching both our species separately. They were waiting for evidence that we could transcend our biological limitations, form connections beyond our evolutionary boundaries. Our unity caught their attention, Marcus realized. They were looking for proof that different species could truly cooperate. Commander Nexus's voice was skeptical, and our military standoff. They're disappointed, Alara translated, wincing slightly. They've encountered many species across the galaxy. Most destroy themselves or each other before achieving true interspecies cooperation. They call themselves. The closest translation would be witnesses or perhaps gardeners. The transmission pattern changed again, becoming even more intricate. Alara gasped, her green skin paling. They're offering us a choice. What kind of choice? Dr. Wright asked. They have technology, knowledge beyond anything either of our species has imagined. They share it only with civilizations that demonstrate the capacity for genuine symbiosis across species boundaries. Her violet eyes opened, filled with wonder. They believe our union, a human and Viridi bonding, might be evidence that our species are ready. Admiral Santos's expression hardened. And if we're not ready in their judgment? They'll leave, Alara said simply. Return in another 1,000 years to check our progress. Many species never see them twice. Marcus turned to face both commanders on their respective screens. This is bigger than any of us, bigger than Earth or Viridi politics, bigger than our wedding, bigger than your military conflict. We have a chance to advance both our civilizations by centuries, perhaps millennia. What do they want us to do? Commander Nexus asked, his earlier hostility replaced by cautious curiosity. Demonstrate that our cooperation isn't isolated, that it represents a genuine capacity in both our species. Alara's chromatophores now moved in a slow, deliberate pattern that she seemed to be controlling consciously. I'm sending them a response, showing them our history, our struggles, but also our potential. For several tense minutes, the command center was silent as Alara communicated with the mysterious visitors. Finally, the pattern on the screen shifted again, holding steady in a new configuration. They're willing to send representatives, she announced. They want to meet with delegations from both Earth and Viridi, and they specifically request that we, Marcus and I, serve as intermediaries. Admiral Santos and Commander Nexus exchanged looks through their respective screens, a moment of shared understanding that transcended their differences. The Unity Accord was never fully ratified, Admiral Santos said slowly. Perhaps it's time to restart those negotiations with new leadership. Commander Nexus's chromatophores displayed a pattern of cautious agreement. The Elders have been reconsidering their position since the attack on Unity Station. Many see now that isolation is no longer viable for either of our species. Within hours, the command center had been transformed into an impromptu diplomatic hub. The military vessels that had come to arrest Marcus and Alara now formed a protective perimeter around Europa, while teams of diplomats and scientists prepared for humanity's and Viridi's second first contact. In a quiet moment before the visitors' arrival, Marcus and Alara stood together at a viewport, looking out at the vast, star-filled blackness beyond Jupiter's massive form. Not exactly the honeymoon I had in mind, Marcus said with a gentle smile, his arm around his wife's shoulders. Alara's chromatophores curled lovingly around his wrist. On Viridi, we have a saying, the universe provides what we need, rarely what we expect. Do you think they're telling the truth, that they can help both our species advance? I believe they're sincere, she replied. But more importantly, I believe in what we've already accomplished. She turned to face him fully. Think about it, Marcus. 3 weeks ago, Earth and Viridi representatives wouldn't even share meals together. Now they're preparing to meet an advanced species as united delegations. All because we fell in love, he marveled. All because we had the courage to show that love to both our worlds, she corrected him. Sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply to be true to your heart, even when everyone tells you it's impossible. As they sealed this truth with a kiss that bridged worlds, the stars beyond the viewport seemed to shimmer with possibility. The wedding that had shocked a colony had now changed the course of 2 civilizations, and perhaps, with the arrival of these celestial witnesses, would help shape the destiny of countless more across the galaxy. In that moment, on an icy moon orbiting a gas giant, surrounded by the vast emptiness of space, yet filled with unlimited potential, Marcus and Alara embodied something greater than either human or Viridi had achieved alone: the transcendent power of love to forge connections across the stars themselves.